created to have some fun together, sharing and singing. So, join and enjoy.
Our love for opera brings us together. Thanks for being with us in this trip.
Vissi is another aria that every soprano would like to have in her repertoire, and of course they do, as it is usually one of the first pieces that they study, moreover, when they are in the lyrical tessiture of the sopranos. Of course, if they are heavier sopranos, we will be talking about it, because lyrical soprano for the whole role of Tosca, the whole role is way too much for a lyrical voice, but we will talk a little more about it. But today, in today's episode, in this series of episodes where we talk or where we are dissecting the most well-known, the most popular arias of the operatic repertoire, it's time for us to talk about this masterpiece, this creation by Maestro Puccini, of course referring to Tosca. And there are good numbers in this opera. There are two of them that have already made it into this season. We are also referring to Luce van le Stelle, the aria by Mario Cavaradossi, which is a separate episode. And of course, we also have the Tres Birre e una Carrozza, also known as the Te Deum by Scarpia. So these three pieces are in the season, and there is a good justification for that. Tosca is one of the most represented operas worldwide every year. Of course, if you're already familiar with the plot, with the libretto of the story, then you already understand many of the motivations and you understand the psychology around Floria Tosca. But if that is not the case, we are going to start first referring that this aria, Vissi d'arte, happens in the second act. If you recall, and you have gone through our posts in Coffee, there is already a post where we talk about being this second act of Tosca one of the most violent acts in the whole history of the opera. Maestro Puccini, as you know, based on the play by Victorien Sardou, adapted into this story into an opera, and this is how we have our own Tosca, the Tosca that everybody remembers, the Tosca that everybody, or every soprano at least, wants to sing, the Mario Cavaradossi that every tenor wants to sing, and the Vitellio Scarpia that every baritone wants to sing. But also, if you're familiar with the story of or the plot of Tosca, then you also know that Tosca is certainly not a beautiful opera, at least not in the terms that one would have, for instance, in the case of Madama Butterfly. Madama Butterfly is clearly, of course, there is a drama, but it is full of very beautiful melodies and touching moments. And still, that's a story that is being depicted. No actual violence acts. The only death that appears on scene is a decision of Madama Butterfly herself. Chocho-san decides to do it herself. When you think about La Bohème, you have the very beautiful role of Mimi, but also there you don't have any violence happening. Of course, it is very unfortunate that Mimi at the end of the opera will die, will perish of the illness that has been consuming her and that we know from the very beginning of the opera. But that's all the drama that happens. But opposite to those, we have Tosca, that it's truly a masterpiece of violence, moreover, in the second act. And in this second act is when this Vissi d'arte happens. Just to summarize very quickly, what we know now is that Mario Cavaradossi is a painter who has very clear political beliefs, which are aligned to Angelotti, who just managed to escape from prison and who has looked for a place to hide and happens to go to the chapel where Mario Cavaradossi is actually painting. So Mario Cavaradossi, finding by accident Angelotti, supports him so that he can escape further as the canyons of the Castel San Angelo are just heard, meaning that they have realized of the escape of Angelotti. So Cavaradossi provides Angelotti a way to escape and a place to hide. For that reason, and that's the reason why he will end up paying with his own life. But that's pretty much what happens in the first act. We also need to understand that Mario was imprisoned and was found because Vitellio Scarpia played on Tosca, knowing that she is a very jealous woman, has brought her to believe that Mario is in fact with another woman, which by accident happens to be or is believed to be the sister of Angelotti, the man who has just escaped. But that is just a trick of Scarpia, who happens to work very well for the very jealous Floria Tosca. That's how Vitellio Scarpia does not find Angelotti, because he's very well hidden, but he has had Mario Cavaradossi be brought to his presence, and that's where the torture scene is going to be starting, which is the main topic of the second act. And so we will witness the evilness in Scarpia trying to get away with what he wants, menacing, threatening Cavaradossi, who happens to be very firm in his beliefs and who is not going to be disclosing where Angelotti is hiding. But for that purpose, knowing that Cavaradossi would resist, Scarpia has made also, with a lie, has made Floria Tosca go to his bureau in the same prison, so that he can manipulate her, because he knows, and that's part of his evilness, that he understands the nature of people and understands the nature of Tosca, and he knows that Tosca loves Cavaradossi so much that by hurting him he will get the secret. He will end up finding where Angelotti is hiding. But Cavaradossi is somehow not the purpose, but it's the way to get the information by using Tosca for that purpose. In that evilness, Scarpia is not willing to stop. And so throughout that act, we have yells or loud expressions of Scarpia, like "più forte, più forte," and Cavaradossi, "vi sfido," defying Scarpia, making sure that Scarpia understands that there is no way he will be revealing if he knows anything about Angelotti. But also, as the punishment, as the torture goes on, he ends up raking Tosca. Tosca now reveals the place where Angelotti is hiding, because as she says during those very violent scenes, when she says, "You are hurting, you are punishing me. Che ho fatto in vita mia? What have I done to you? What have I done to you, Scarpa, in my life? You are hurting me. You are torturing me." By torturing Cavaradossi, it is in fact me that you are torturing. Che così torturate l'anima, sì l'anima mi torturate. And we have to understand, because it's going to be very important now that we are reaching the Vissi d'arte, we need to understand in what state of mind is Floria Tosca. Floria Tosca was an artist, just a singer. and I don't want to be despective, but by just a singer, I mean it is a woman, an artist, who just cares for her art, who has nothing to do with politics, who does not have a position towards one or the other sides, who is not dealing with conflicts. All her life is the love she has for Cavaradossi and her art. And now she is in the middle of this horrible political and violent situation where she's witnessing, or at least from a distance, because she at the beginning she only hears the yells of Mario, and so she's witnessing the torture of the man you love the most. If you listen, if you can witness the torture of a person you love the most, of course it's going to break you. Of course it's going to throw you into state of mind where the only hope you have is that he is set free, that he can be finally released. That's the state of mind of pure desperation that Floria Tosca has. Even she asks Mario for permission to reveal the secret because she can't stand it no more. Because she says, Mario, consenti ch'io parli, asking for that permission for Mario, please allow me to speak. And Mario refuses. You don't know anything to say nulla, so what can you reveal if you know nothing? So don't worry, nothing is happening to me, even though he also knows that he's about to break. So Mario Cavaradossi is very firm psychologically, even though he's about to be broken physically, and on the contrary, Tosca is well physically, but it's just about to be broken psychologically. And as she's broken, it's how she reveals, Nel pozzo del giardino, he's hiding at the well in the garden. And that's how Scarpia will send his people to look for Angelotti to Nel pozzo nel giardino. And not only he can't be just happy with having gotten the secret. He has to tell Mario that he has just been betrayed by Tosca. So he will reveal it, and now not only Tosca comes from those long minutes of psychological torture, but now she will be accused of being a traitor by the man she has committed everything for. So Mario will yell at her, Maledetta! Mal tradito! Maledetta! And Tosca will beg Mario to forgive her, but Mario is out of his mind. He's very, very, very upset at Tosca. So by the end of this scene, not only Tosca has suffered for being how they are breaking the body of Mario, but now she has just been rejected by Mario herself. But see, if you think that is enough for a person to stand, now Tosca will ask Vitellio Scarpa to release Mario, and to ask for him to be released, she asks quanto? Il prezzo, because she thinks that with money he can be released. But Scarpia will say, a donna bella io non mi vendo a prezzo di moneta. For a beautiful woman, I will not do it for money. And he will reveal his true intentions from the beginning. He wants to possess Tosca. He wants, Vitellio Scarpia wants to have sexual intercourse and possess Tosca. Of course, at the beginning she will reject him. Mi fai ribrezzo, va, va. Aiuto, aiuto. She asks for someone to help her, but she's in the office, she's in the domain of Scarpia. Who could even be willing to help her? She's defenseless. There, she will be a victim of Scarpia, but Scarpia is very clear. Violenza non ti farò. I will not force you to do it. It has to be your own decision. He knows that he could rape her if he wanted it. He has all the guards here. It's his domains. What does he have to lose? He has nothing to lose, but he doesn't want to force Tosca. Tosca needs to accept voluntarily. And that's what she will do once she finds that Mario is to be hung, because Angelotti has been found nel pozzo del giardino, at the well in the garden. So Scarpia is getting away with everything. He has captured Mario, he has captured back Angelotti, and now he's going to have Tosca. And in the middle of this horrible situation, there is this sort of pause among all this violence, where Tosca will have her aria, very well known aria, Vissi, where she will address to la Madonna, she will address to the Virgin, asking, why are you treating me like this? And at this point, I also wanted to mention that I am pretty sure that many of us, many of the people who are listening to this program, might be familiar of this when things are going horribly wrong, when we feel that we have nothing else to lose, and we may raise our voice, or we may ask our God or our gods, why are we being treated like that? It does not seem fair. We cannot stand the suffering any longer, but we feel we have not been bad people. Why are we receiving this treatment in return? And Tosca says, I just sang. I gave my singing to the angels and the saints. How come that now I am in the middle of such a situation? And so, in piano, with the indications in the score by Maestro Puccini, that's how her aria starts. Vissi d'arte, vissi d'amore, non feci mai male ad anima viva, con man furtiva, quante miserie conobbi aiutai. So this first phrase by Floria Tosca, where she says, as I was saying, Vissi d'arte in piano, and there is also a notation by Maestro Puccini that says dolcissimo con grande sentimento, and I wanted to address both the dolcissimo and grande sentimento, pointing back to the fact that at this moment Tosca is already broken psychologically by the suffering she saw in her beloved Mario, and now understanding that for her the only way out is to accept the sexual intercourse with Scarpia, she feels helpless. She feels so hurt that all she can do is address these notes to the Virgin. But make no mistake, this is not meant to be beautiful. She's not singing to the glory of the saints and the Virgin. she's hurt. She's, in a way, feeling like she's being left behind by the Virgin and the saints. So the voice needs to have this suffering. It is not Mimi singing, "Si mi chiamano Mimi, ma il mio nome è Lucia, ma la storia mia è breve. A te la guaseta ricamo in casa e fuori." It is not Vissi d'arte, vissi d'amor. It is suffering. So the soprano has to have that in mind. It is a very short aria, barely around 2.5 minutes, but throughout those minutes, the voice of the soprano has to have that sound, that color of being very, very hurt internally. Why are you treating me like this? Not fully defying, perché me ne. It is not like that, but it is hurt. Perché me ne rimoneri. And the soprano needs to be very clear around that, because there is something else that I wanted to mention. Unfortunately, when you happen to have the opportunity of watching this aria being part of a recital, of a concert, meaning not in the opera, actually only as a soloist piece, the sopranos tend to exaggerate or overdo certain parts with the purpose of reaching the emotion that Tosca has. But by exaggerating and overdoing, what they do is that they build an aria that is not believable. It is not by exaggerating certain syllables or keeping for longer certain parts that we are going to believe that Floria is suffering. We are going to believe that Floria is suffering and feels abandoned by the Virgin and the saints because of the sound in her voice. If she has that sound in her voice, we are going to believe the complete aria. Opposite, as singing it, very lyrical, very beautiful, rounding sounds, you are broken. If you are broken, you cannot be you cannot have all that virtuosism in giving many accents and giving all the beautiful Puccini melody in the aria. I am not saying that it has to be sung horrible, but there is so much heart. You have been so harmed so deeply that your emotion stands over the melody. The voice has to sound hurt. That's the only way we are going to believe the suffering of Floria Tosca. So after having sung this Vissi d'arte, vissi d'amore, non feci mai male ad anima viva. Viva. Remember that the voice has to be suffering. And so Tosca has just said, I just lived for the art. I just lived for the love. I have never hurt any living being. Con man furtiva quantum miserie connovi aiutai. And to the poor and people who suffer, I have always helped with my hands. I have always supported to people who have needed it. And there is a little more or stronger sounding here. Con man furtiva quante miserie connovia iutai. Because this is an important passage. We are coming from saying, I have never hurt any living being, and I have always helped anyone in distress or any poor who has needed it. And then comes the second part. Now, remember that the first part, the note by Maestro Puccini, says dolcissimo con grande sentimento, and the following part is again the same note. For the music lines, it says dolcissimo con grande sentimento, but for the vocal, it also has the same, con grande sentimento, and again starts with a piano. Also, because this now gives you the idea that you are suffering, you are broken psychologically, you know that you are about to give yourself to the woman, to a person, to a man that is repugnant. How would you feel? Of course, you don't shout out sempre con fe, because that is too much. That cannot be the emotion of Tosca. The emotion of Tosca has to be more fragile. Sempre con fe sincera, la mia preghiera ai santi tabernacoli salì, sempre con fe sincera, diedi fiori all'altar. Remember that since you are suffering, and maybe I should break it down a little. So we started with sempre con fe. There is a shakatura, and remember that whenever there is an ornament, even if it is in a lyrical piece, it means emotion. Remember that you are broken. If you are broken, it makes sense that you sing con fe, con fe sincera, because always my faith was sincere. I always did all of this with sincere faith. La mia preghiera ai santi tabernacoli salì. Sempre con fe sincera diedi fiori all'altar. So I was not lying when I sang, when I gave my prayers to the saints. My faith was always sincere when I brought my flowers to the altar. I was always sincere. If I was always sincere, why are you paying me this way? Perché me ne rimuneri così? If you see it from that perspective, then it makes full sense how the dynamics of the aria are making progress. Suffering sempre con fe sincera, la mia preghiera ai santi tabernacoli salì, sempre con fe sincera. Alzandosi, because she was on her knees, I forgot to mention that. In the opera it is usually sung in her knees. Sometimes the sopranos in concert also are on their knees. However, since they are usually in very elegant night dresses, night gowns, it's difficult for them to bend their knees and then trying to stand up. Sometimes it might be dangerous since they are also most of the times wearing high heels. But well, there are sopranos who do it in concerts and recitals, and it is usually a must in the opera itself. So alzandosi, in that part, she says, after sempre con fe sincera diedi fiori all'altar. And it is not only physically that she's standing up. She's standing up because she wants somehow to get close because in a way, this is like a reproach to her, to the saints and the Virgin. Because now there is also an indication of Maestro Puccini that for a second you go to a crescendo. You remember that you come from a piano. So you come from singing piano softly. You come from singing a piano, you reach a small peak in forte, not fortissimo, only forte, for an instant, and immediately you go back to a diminuendo. So that peak of emotion is very short. Sempre con fe sincera, ieri fiori all'altar. Also here there's usually, and it has to do with the wish of the soprano, there is already a diminuendo, so she has to diminish the volume. How long she wants to keep it? I think that as long as it is effective, because you can do it more rushed. The problem here is that if you start it stronger, then the effectiveness of the crescendo is not noticed, because if she does it may work. It really is a matter of taste. However, personally, I think that it is more effective if you do it, as Maestro Puccini says, starting from a much softer piano. Nell'ora del dolore, perché, Signore, perché me ne rimonei così. Also for this part, and as I was sharing with you, for it to be believable, the emotion of feeling defenseless, the emotion of feeling hurt has to be throughout the complete aria. So that when she reaches this part, nell'ora del dolore, perché, Signore, perché me ne rimonei così. So that it is believable. In this part, she says, nell'ora, well, after having said that she was sincere in the things that she gave to the saints, that she was always sincere in the flowers she brought to the altar. Why, after being this sincere, nell'ora del dolore, perché, Signor? But why now, in this time of suffering, in these bitter times, why, my Lord, why, my God, why are you paying me like this? And this final part, when you say, rimuneri così, why are you paying me like this? The voice of the soprano, even though there is not notation of a diminuendo or a sudden stop in the voice of the soprano, it is usually more effective when they make their voice language. Me ne rimoneri così. Yeah. Moreover, because if you do it like that, even though there is a pause at the end of così and the next phrase starts ieri, gioieri, if you add the two pauses of each bar, there is a significant amount of time when the soprano is expected not to sing. What many sopranos do like this, and I think that is a very good way of proceeding, that they keep the duration of così so that it is almost continuous, almost legato to the following phrase. So instead of saying così, pause, di gioielli. The other way that I was explaining is to keep longer. Così, ieri gioielli della Madonna al manto ed ieri il canto agli astri al cieli che ne ridean più belli nell'ora del dolor. Then we're reaching the final part, but before we reach the final part, I hope you agree that it feels more effective. Così, ieri. Because if you diminish così and start also very pianissimo, ieri, it makes sense. Così, ieri gioielli della Madonna al manto ed ieri il canto. And notice, well, you need to be watching the score yourself, because the way the words and the syllables are put together are building, even though there is again no notation of the maestro telling us to increase and increase volume. It has naturally evolved into that. Ieri gioielli della Madonna al manto ed ieri il canto agli astri al cieli che ne redian più belli. Again rising nell'ora del dolor. Perché now we have reached the final part, which of course I am sure that many people identify, because the soprano is asked to sing an A, then a B, then she will decrease for a B, and then she will go for a G. So you recall this, because at the end of the aria it's perché nell'ora del dolore, perché after that perché Signor. They are in fact different words. So it has to be Signor. And the sopranos would keep it for as long as they can. So you may have sopranos that do not have that very effective or very good fiato. There are many others that would exaggerate unnecessarily any of the first Signor, or then the or the third but at the end I think that no matter how long they want to keep it, that it has to be very well thought so that it makes sense. Because if you, I mean the soprano does Signor, maybe brief because she cannot hold the B for longer. But the has to be, remember, suffering. It is not a display of, hey, look, I am Turandot, or I am Manon Lescaut and I can keep my notes for long. It is not that. It is a Floria Tosca suffering. So even if they go for the perché me ne così, when they go to this final part, after the final notes, there are many ways of doing it, many rush, perché me ne rimanere così, because they want to keep the così for longer. But from my perspective, keeping the così for very long makes it a little, from my perspective, too exaggerated, because you come from three long notes. Signora, small, perché me ne rimanere così. I think that it's more effective if it is done with full emotion. Così. And even if they finish and can give the impression that they lose their voice because they can't contain crying, that is way more effective than keeping the così just because they want to keep the così for long to show they have the breath. So it is a complex in building the whole idea. It is short, as I want to insist. It is short. It is not that technically difficult vocally. If you have enough breath, any fair soprano would have a B in her range. That wouldn't be a problem. Maybe they would have problems with their fiato to keep the notes for longer. But the important here is no matter how long or how short they can sustain the notes, the important is that everything makes sense in the evolution of the emotion. If you have been playing, if nobody believes you, Ieri gioielli della Madonna al manto, if you're just singing out, playing with no emotion in there, how can you expect people to believe you when you say perché me ne rimaneri così? Nobody's going to believe anything. So I think that a more discreet, which by the way makes more sense with a person who has been tormented, who is broken psychologically, is not in her full strength. She is weak and she knows it. That's why she's asking her Lord and the Virgin and the saints, why is she being treated like this? Well, I hope you enjoyed these comments, these thoughts on the interpretation and the writing of Maestro Puccini of one of the most popular arias for the soprano, the Vissi d'arte.
You can follow our channel for the latest updates and more content. Opera We Love Singing, in just one word. Link in the description of the episode.